Aaliyah had always lived life on her terms. She believed herself to be a queen, even in childhood. Now, as a young woman, she ruled her world with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. Being the only daughter of Chief Alabi, one of the wealthiest men in the city, Aaliyah saw the world through the lenses of luxury and privilege. Her mornings began with meticulous rituals, expensive skincare routines, designer outfits selected by her personal stylist, and gourmet breakfasts served by her chef. She exuded confidence, but it was laced with disdain for anyone she considered beneath her. That morning, Aaliyah's fury was directed at her driver, who had dared to show up late. "I don't care if you had a flat tire," she yelled, her voice echoing through the marble-floored mansion. "You're fired. Leave my sight." Her friends, sipping on lattes in the living room, exchanged amused glances. "Aaliyah, you don't need to stress over these lowlifes," one of them said. "Hire someone else. There are plenty of desperate people out there." And that was exactly what Aaliyah did. Within hours, she had hired a new driver, a man named Musa. Unbeknownst to her, this quiet, unassuming man would turn her world upside down. By afternoon, Musa arrived at Aaliyah's mansion. He was tall, with an unassuming demeanor, wearing simple, neatly ironed clothes. His calm face gave away no emotions, and his humble greeting irritated Aaliyah immediately. "Are you the new driver?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Musa," he replied, bowing slightly. Aaliyah scoffed. "Don't call me ma'am. You will address me as Miss Aaliyah. And you better understand that I don't tolerate incompetence. Keep the car clean, show up on time, and don't ask questions. Do you understand?" "Yes, Miss Aaliyah," Musa replied, his tone steady. Aaliyah studied him for a moment. Something about his calmness unsettled her. She dismissed it with a wave of her manicured hand. "Good. Now, I need you to drive me to the spa. Don't embarrass me." The drive began, and Aaliyah immediately started giving instructions. "Slow down. Don't you know how to handle a luxury car? I don't want to scratch on this vehicle, or you'll regret it." Musa remained silent, following her directions without complaint. Aaliyah grew more annoyed. Most drivers she'd employed had at least tried to win her favor, but Musa was different. His silence made her feel as though she wasn't in control. After a few minutes, Aaliyah's phone rang. She answered in her usual confident tone, laughing loudly and making plans for an upcoming socialite party. Musa listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When they arrived at the spa, Aaliyah stepped out without a word of thanks. "Wait here. Don't wander off," she ordered. As she disappeared into the building, Musa leaned back in the driver's seat, a faint smile crossing his lips. His phone buzzed, and he quickly checked it. The message read, "Meeting with the investors went well. Awaiting your final decision, sir." Musa replied, "I'll review the proposal tonight. Keep me updated." He slipped the phone back into his pocket just as Aaliyah returned, her arms laden with shopping bags. She didn't notice the slight shift in his demeanor as he opened the car door for her. "Drive me home," she snapped. The car glided through the bustling city streets. Aaliyah's eyes were glued to her phone, scrolling through pictures of luxury vacations and expensive jewelry. She didn't notice Musa's eyes briefly scan a billboard advertising one of his companies. As they pulled into the mansion's driveway, Aaliyah sighed dramatically. "Make sure you clean the car before tomorrow. I have an important event, and I can't have dust ruining my image." "Of course, Miss Aaliyah," Musa replied, his voice calm as ever. But as he watched her disappear into the grand house, his expression changed. There was a glint of something in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or quiet determination. Whatever it was, it hinted at a larger plan. The next morning, Musa arrived at the mansion on time, his punctuality catching Aaliyah off guard. She'd expected him to slip up, as so many of her previous drivers had. "At least you know how to show up on time," she remarked, sliding into the car. "Thank you, Miss Aaliyah," he said simply, adjusting the rearview mirror. The day's itinerary included a meeting with one of her father's business partners, a lunch with her friends at a high-end restaurant, and shopping at an exclusive boutique. Aaliyah barked orders throughout the day, criticizing Musa's driving, his silence, and even his choice of cologne. "Do you even own anything decent?" she asked at one point, wrinkling her nose. Musa's response was polite but firm. I dress for the job, Miss Aaliyah. Aaliyah narrowed her eyes, sensing something in his tone, a quiet confidence that unnerved her. She brushed it off, convinced he was just another poor man lucky to have a job. At the boutique, Aaliyah spent hours trying on outfits while Musa waited patiently in the car. He used the time to review documents on his tablet, approving a multimillion-dollar deal with a flick of his finger. When Aaliyah finally returned, she barely glanced at him. Drive faster. I'm late for my lunch. Musa obliged, navigating the city traffic with ease. As they arrived at the restaurant, Aaliyah's friends crowded around her, laughing and complimenting her outfit. Your driver looks like a schoolteacher, one of them joked, glancing at Musa. Aaliyah smirked. He's just another nobody. Let's go inside. But Musa's calm expression didn't falter. He watched them go, his thoughts unreadable. When Musa returned home that evening, the humble driver's persona fell away like a mask. His real life was far removed from the world of menial jobs. He lived in an expansive penthouse overlooking the city, a luxurious space adorned with modern art, designer furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the sparkling skyline. A well-dressed assistant greeted him as he walked in. Welcome back, sir. Your schedule for tomorrow includes a meeting with the board of directors at Crown Holdings and dinner with the governor. Musa nodded, removing his modest driver's jacket. Thank you, Samuel. Has the report from the new factory come in? Yes, sir. It's on your desk. Also, the charity gala's planning committee confirmed your attendance next week. Musa walked into his private office, where a sleek desk held files and a laptop displaying financial projections. The name Crown Holdings, his company, flashed across the screen. It was a conglomerate spanning real estate, technology, and transportation, making Musa one of the city's most influential businessmen. Despite his immense wealth, Musa had chosen a low-profile lifestyle. He found joy in observing people's true nature, which was why he occasionally disguised himself as an average worker. It was during one such stint that he had taken the job as Aaliyah's driver. He picked up a photo on his desk, a picture of his late parents. They had been simple traders, teaching him the value of humility and hard work. Never let money make you forget where you came from, his mother had always said. Musa lived by those words, even as his fortune grew. As he reviewed the factory report, his thoughts drifted back to Aaliyah. Her arrogance reminded him of people he had encountered before, those who mistook privilege for power. Still, Musa didn't hold grudges. He believed in teaching lessons, often in the most unexpected ways. The next morning, Aaliyah's bad mood was evident as she stormed out of the house. She had argued with her father over finances, though she would never admit that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Musa, she snapped, why isn't the car door open? Do I have to do everything myself? Musa quickly stepped out and opened the door, bowing slightly. My apologies, Miss Aaliyah. Her friends were already seated inside, gossiping about their latest shopping trips. As Musa drove, Aaliyah started her usual routine of complaints. Watch the road. Do you even know how to drive properly? She yelled, ignoring the amused looks her friends exchanged. At a red light, Musa finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Miss Aaliyah, I assure you I am capable of driving safely. His composure only irritated her further. Capable? I doubt it. People like you are only good for following orders. The words stung her friends, who weren't as bold as Aaliyah when it came to berating others. One of them whispered, maybe you're being too harsh? But Aaliyah dismissed the comment with a wave. Harsh? Please. He works for me. He's lucky to even be in my car. Musa said nothing, though the faintest hint of a smile crossed his lips. As the car reached their destination, a high-end mall, Aaliyah stepped out dramatically, announcing her arrival as if the world revolved around her. Musa stayed back, watching silently. Inside the mall, her friends couldn't resist teasing her. Aaliyah, you're so mean to that driver. What if he's secretly rich or something? One of them joked. Aaliyah laughed. Please, a man like that? He's probably never even seen a private jet. Let's shop. Later that evening, Musa received a phone call. It was from one of his trusted business partners. Sir, your presence at the charity gala is confirmed. The organizers are thrilled that you'll be making a personal donation this year. Thank you, Musa replied. He hung up and stared at the invitation card on his desk. The charity gala was the most prestigious event in the city, attended by politicians, CEOs, and the elite. He would make an entrance, not as Aaliyah's driver, but as the billionaire he truly was. The next morning, Aaliyah saw the invitation lying on the passenger seat of the car. She picked it up, frowning. What's this? Musa glanced at her through the rearview mirror. An invitation to the charity gala, Miss Aaliyah. She raised an eyebrow. And why would someone like you have this? Are they inviting everyone now? Musa smiled faintly. It was sent to me by an acquaintance. I'm not sure why, but I thought it would be interesting to attend. Aaliyah scoffed. Don't embarrass yourself. That's not a place for drivers. Musa remained silent, but his gaze lingered on her reflection in the mirror, a knowing look that made Aaliyah feel uneasy. The night of the charity gala arrived. Aaliyah was dressed to impress in a custom-made gown, her hair and makeup done by the city's top stylists. She felt unstoppable, ready to mingle with the elite and show off her status. As she arrived at the grand event venue, she stepped out of her father's luxury car, waving confidently at photographers. The gala hall glittered with chandeliers and an air of exclusivity. Her friends were already inside, sipping champagne and chatting about the city's latest gossip. Aaliyah, you look stunning, one of them exclaimed as she entered. Of course, she replied smugly, taking a glass of champagne. Where's the spotlight? I'm ready for it. As the night progressed, Aaliyah felt a sense of superiority as she walked among the wealthy and powerful. She paid little attention to the stage until the host's voice boomed over the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome one of the city's most generous philanthropists tonight. Please give a warm round of applause to the CEO of Crown Holdings, Mr. Musa Ibrahim. Aaliyah froze. The name hit her like a lightning bolt. No way, she muttered, turning toward the stage. The crowd parted, and there he was, Musa, her driver, stepping onto the stage in an impeccably tailored suit. He looked nothing like the man she thought she knew. His confident stride and warm smile left the audience in awe. Aaliyah's heart raced as she exchanged stunned glances with her friends. That's your driver? One of them whispered, barely able to contain her shock. Aaliyah didn't answer. Her eyes remained glued to Musa as he addressed the crowd. It's an honor to be here tonight, Musa began, his voice steady and commanding. Charity has always been a cornerstone of my beliefs. I grew up understanding the importance of giving back, and tonight, I'm pledging 500 million Nigerian nairas to the Children's Education Initiative. The room erupted in applause, but Aaliyah couldn't process the words. How could the man she had ridiculed daily, humiliated without a second thought, be standing there as one of the city's most powerful figures? Musa's eyes scanned the room, and for a brief moment, they locked with hers. A faint smile tugged at his lips before he turned back to the audience. Aaliyah felt a lump in her throat. Her confidence, her pride, her sense of superiority, all of it felt like it was crumbling. Aaliyah left the gala in a daze, her mind replaying every interaction she'd had with Musa. How had she missed the signs? She thought about the invitation card in his car, his calm demeanor, and the subtle way he always seemed to stay one step ahead of her. The next morning, she confronted him. Musa, she said as he opened the car door for her. You never mentioned anything about being someone important. He raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. I don't believe it was relevant to my job, Miss Aaliyah. Not relevant, she sputtered. You're the CEO of Crown Holdings. You've been driving me around like some driver. Musa finished, his tone even. She glared at him, but he remained unfazed. Why are you doing this? She demanded. Musa shut the door gently after she got in. Perhaps I wanted to see who you really are, Miss Aaliyah. Her cheeks burned, but she didn't respond. As he started the car, she sat in silence, grappling with the realization that her every word, every insult, had been heard by someone far more powerful than she could have imagined. As the days passed, Aaliyah couldn't shake her unease around Musa. Meanwhile, the city was thrown into chaos by a financial scandal. One of the largest banks faced a sudden collapse, sending shockwaves through the economy. Even Chief Alabi's business empire was affected, forcing Aliyah to confront the reality of her family's precarious situation. To her surprise, Musa seemed to know everything about the crisis. One day, as he drove her to a meeting with her father, he casually mentioned, Crown Holdings has been working on a proposal to stabilize the market. The board will present it tomorrow. Aliyah stared at him, her mind racing. How do you know that? Musa glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his expression calm. Let's just say I've been in a few boardrooms. Her father, once a pillar of confidence, looked unusually stressed during the meeting. The market is collapsing, he told her. We might lose everything if this isn't resolved. Aliyah's heart sank. For the first time, she felt powerless. That evening, Musa received a call in her presence. She overheard fragments of the conversation. Yes, I'll approve the loan. Ensure it reaches the smaller businesses first. After he hung up, she turned to him. What are you doing? Are you helping fix this crisis? Musa gave her a measured look. Some problems require more than just money, Miss Aliyah. They require the right intentions. She stared at him, her usual arrogance giving way to something unfamiliar. Respect. The financial scandal worsened, and Aliyah's father, Chief Alabi, struggled to keep his empire afloat. For the first time in her life, Aliyah was forced to confront a world where her family's wealth and influence weren't guaranteed. Her father began spending long nights in his study, making desperate phone calls and meeting with investors. Aliyah, unused to seeing him in such a vulnerable state, felt her carefully constructed world crumble. One afternoon, her father summoned her to his office. He looked older, the weight of his troubles etched into his face. Aliyah, he began, his voice heavy, things are not as they used to be. I need you to understand that we may have to make sacrifices. What sacrifices? She asked, her voice trembling. We're losing assets. The company might not survive if this crisis continues. I've already had to sell the private jet. The words hit her like a blow. What do you mean? We're the Alabis. This can't happen to us. Her father sighed. The world doesn't care about names when the numbers don't add up. I'm doing everything I can to save what we have. Aliyah stormed out of the room, her mind racing. She wasn't ready to face a reality without the wealth that defined her life. As she retreated to her room, she noticed Musa standing quietly in the hallway, his calm gaze seeming to pierce through her. Aliyah's growing frustration found an outlet in Musa. She continued to berate him, using him as a scapegoat for her insecurities. But Musa remained unshaken, his silence a stark contrast to her emotional outbursts. One day, after a particularly heated tirade, Musa spoke up. Miss Aliyah, he said, his tone measured, anger won't change your situation. If you want to regain control, you need to start thinking differently. His words stopped her in her tracks. And what would you know about control? She snapped. More than you think, he replied simply. For the first time, Aliyah didn't have a retort. Instead, she found herself curious about the man who seemed to know more about navigating challenges than she did. Aliyah's curiosity about Musa grew as her family's financial troubles deepened. One evening, she found herself asking him questions during a drive, something she'd never done before. You've been so calm through all of this, she said. Do you not worry about money? Musa glanced at her in the rearview mirror, a faint smile playing on his lips. Worrying about money doesn't solve problems, Miss Aliyah. Understanding it does. His response intrigued her. And what do you understand about it? A great deal, he said, his tone enigmatic. Aliyah frowned but didn't press further. For the first time, she felt a strange respect for him, a man she'd once considered beneath her. The next day, Musa surprised Aliyah with a detour on their way to her friend's house. Where are we going? She asked, irritated. You'll see, Musa replied. They arrived at a community center in one of the poorer parts of the city. Aliyah hesitated as Musa led her inside. She was unprepared for what she saw. Children laughing and playing, volunteers distributing food, and a sense of community she'd never experienced. What is this place? She asked. It's a charity I support, Musa said. These children have nothing, yet they find joy in the simplest things. It's a reminder of what truly matters. Aliyah was silent as she watched a young girl run up to Musa, hugging him tightly. Uncle Musa! the girl exclaimed, beaming. Aaliyah felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Guilt, perhaps, or admiration. For the first time, she realized how narrow her perspective had been. Aaliyah's experiences at the community center lingered in her mind. She began noticing things she'd previously ignored. The struggles of the people around her, the humanity in the faces of those she'd dismissed. One evening, she found herself confiding in Musa. "My father says we might lose the mansion," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Musa nodded thoughtfully. "Change isn't always a bad thing, Miss Aaliyah. Sometimes it's an opportunity to grow." His words struck a chord, though she wasn't ready to admit it. Aaliyah's transformation was slow but inevitable. The more time she spent with Musa, the more she began to question the values she had held so dear. Her world, once built on a foundation of privilege, was now crumbling, but through it, she began to see life through a new lens. One evening, as they sat in traffic, Musa spoke again, his voice calm and steady, as always. "You know, Miss Aaliyah, people like us, those with wealth and status, sometimes forget that we didn't get here alone," he said, his eyes focused on the road. Aaliyah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had heard versions of this from her father, but Musa's words carried a weight that was hard to ignore. "What do you mean?" she asked, unsure if she was ready to confront the truth behind his statement. Musa took a deep breath. "The world may see us as successful, but the reality is much more complex. Everyone who is successful owes something to the people they step over, the relationships they build, and yes, even to their failures." Aaliyah didn't respond right away, the words resonating within her. For the first time, she felt a sense of self-awareness. She had always seen herself as above others, as the daughter of a powerful man who could never be touched by hardship. But now, everything was changing. "Is that why you help people?" she asked, her voice soft. "Because you've been helped?" Musa smiled, but it wasn't a smile of pride. It was more contemplative, as if he was reflecting on a long journey. "I help because I know what it's like to need help, and I help because I want to make a difference, not just for me, but for those who can't help themselves." Aaliyah stared at him, her mind racing. She had been so focused on her own problems that she had failed to recognize the struggles of others, those without a silver spoon, without the privilege she had taken for granted. "I never thought about it that way," she admitted. Musa didn't say anything more. His silence was both a teaching moment and a gentle push for her to find her own path. Days turned into weeks, and Aaliyah found herself thinking more about what Musa had said. She started visiting the community center more often, helping with the children's education program, donating her time and resources. The experience was humbling. Aaliyah realized that the satisfaction she felt when giving, when truly helping, was more fulfilling than anything money could buy. She stopped obsessing over material possessions, the expensive shoes, the latest gadgets. Instead, she found joy in giving back to the community. One afternoon, as she was leaving the center, Aaliyah ran into Musa again. This time, she didn't feel her usual superiority. She greeted him as an equal. "Musa," she said, "I'm starting to see things differently. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I feel like I'm waking up from a dream." Musa gave her one of his rare smiles. "That's a good thing, Miss Aaliyah. It means you're beginning to understand the bigger picture." She nodded. "I used to think that wealth and power were everything, but now I see how shallow that is." Musa's eyes softened, and for the first time, Aaliyah felt like they were on the same level. "It's easy to get caught up in the world of appearances," Musa said, "but the real wealth is in the impact you make on others' lives. That's what truly matters." Aaliyah's newfound perspective eventually led her to a difficult conversation with her father. Chief Alabi had always been a towering figure in her life, the man who controlled everything, the man who had built the empire she was used to. But now, as his business floundered and his pride began to erode, Aaliyah found herself questioning his choices. She sat across from him in his study, the tension palpable. "Father," she began, her voice steady but firm, "I think we need to rethink our approach. The way we've been running things, it's not sustainable anymore." Chief Alabi raised an eyebrow, a mixture of surprise and irritation on his face. "What are you talking about, Aaliyah? We've weathered storms before. This is no different." Aaliyah shook her head. It's different now, father. The world's changed. We need to focus on giving back, on helping others. We can't keep acting like our wealth is a shield. That's not going to save us. Her father's expression softened for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Aaliyah, you don't understand. This business, it's our legacy. If we lose it, we lose everything. I understand more than you think, she said. I've been blind, father. I've been so caught up in the luxury that I forgot what really matters. The conversation wasn't easy, and Chief Alabi didn't immediately agree with her. But something in Aaliyah's voice, her sincerity, her change, made him pause. As the weeks went on, Aaliyah's transformation became evident to those around her. She was no longer the arrogant, entitled daughter of Chief Alabi. Instead, she had become someone grounded, someone who had learned the value of humility, service, and generosity. Her involvement in the community center grew, and she took on a leadership role, working with underprivileged families, teaching financial literacy, and organizing charity events. The more she gave, the more fulfilled she felt. And, gradually, her relationship with her father began to change. Chief Alabi saw the difference in her actions, though he still struggled to let go of old ways. But there was hope. One evening, as Aaliyah sat with Musa in the car after a long day, she turned to him. Musa, she said quietly, thank you. I don't think I'd have seen any of this if it weren't for you. He glanced at her, a look of understanding in his eyes. You saw it in yourself, Miss Aaliyah. I just gave you the space to do so. She smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. I'm ready to take on the world now, she said, her voice filled with determination. And for the first time, Aaliyah knew she wasn't alone. As Aaliyah's life continued to shift, so did the dynamics within her family. The financial crisis had made things more difficult, but it also gave her the opportunity to challenge the traditional way of thinking that had been passed down by her father. Chief Alabi's empire was teetering on the edge. The banks were pressing for repayments, and competitors were swooping in, eager to take a bite of the Alabi family's remaining assets. Aaliyah could feel the pressure mounting every day as her father worked tirelessly to keep things afloat. But as much as Chief Alabi worked to stabilize the business, he wasn't willing to let go of his old ways. He still saw wealth as the answer to everything, still believed that power and control were the only things that mattered in the world of business. Aaliyah knew this approach was flawed. She had learned that real change came from creating something meaningful, something that would benefit everyone, not just the privileged few. She was ready to fight for the future of the company, but she wasn't about to sacrifice her new beliefs in the process. One evening, as they sat in her father's study, she finally spoke up again. Father, Aaliyah began, her voice firm but respectful. I think we need to rethink the way we're approaching this crisis. We can't continue to operate just for profit. We need to build something that has real value, something that helps the people around us. Chief Alabi's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about, Aaliyah? We need to focus on saving the business, not some idealistic dream. I've worked too hard to lose it all now. I'm not saying we give up the business, Aaliyah replied, trying to keep her voice calm. But I've learned that wealth without purpose is empty. We have to find a way to create real value, not just for us, but for the community too. Her father looked at her as if she had suddenly become a stranger. And what do you expect me to do with these ridiculous ideas? You've spent too much time with that driver of yours. He's filled your head with nonsense. Aaliyah felt a sharp pang in her chest at her father's words. He still didn't understand. Musa, the very man her father dismissed, had been the one to open her eyes, the one who had guided her toward this new understanding. But she couldn't blame her father for his narrow view. After all, it had taken years for Aaliyah to see beyond her own privilege. I'm asking you to trust me, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm asking you to think about what kind of legacy you want to leave behind. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then, her father sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. You're asking me to risk everything for a dream that might not work. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Aaliyah knew that this wasn't going to be an easy battle. She had come so far, but her father was a man of tradition. It would take time to convince him that the future lay in new ways of thinking. Then I'll do it without you, she said quietly. But I'm going to make this work, even if I have to do it on my own. Her words hung in the air. For the first time in her life, Aaliyah felt the weight of her decisions. She was no longer just the daughter of Chief Alabi. She was someone who was ready to carve her own path. Despite her father's reluctance, Aaliyah was determined. She had no intention of backing down. With the help of Musa, she began to reimagine how the family business could operate, focusing not just on profit, but on creating real social impact. Her first major step was to launch a corporate social responsibility initiative, focusing on education, healthcare, and sustainable development for the communities around them. She poured her own resources into the project, using her position as a member of the Alabi family to bring attention to causes that had long been ignored by the elite. She spent hours researching what the communities needed most: school supplies, healthcare clinics, clean water, and found ways to partner with local organizations. "I can't do this alone, Musa," Aaliyah said one day, as they drove to meet with a group of teachers and community leaders. "I don't know how to make it all happen. It's bigger than me." Musa, who had become her most trusted ally and friend, smiled softly. "You're not alone, Miss Aaliyah. The right people will follow you if you show them the way. You've already started, and that's the hardest part." With Musa's guidance, Aaliyah began to see a network of support forming around her. Slowly but surely, others joined in, volunteering their time, resources, and expertise. They worked together to build schools, establish healthcare clinics, and offer vocational training for young people in the area. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. For the first time in her life, Aaliyah felt like she was part of something that was truly making a difference. The project gained momentum, and soon, Aaliyah's efforts began to attract the attention of both local and international organizations. Media outlets picked up the story, showcasing the Alabi family's commitment to social good. Despite the financial struggles they faced, the public's perception of the family began to shift. They were no longer just wealthy elites. They were now seen as catalysts for positive change. However, the true test came when Aaliyah had to present the initiative to the board of directors at the next shareholders meeting. She knew that her father's old business partners would resist her new vision. They had always been driven by profit, not purpose. The day of the meeting arrived, and Aaliyah stood at the head of the table, her father beside her, and Musa seated in the back. The boardroom was tense, and the board members eyed her with suspicion. "I know this initiative is unorthodox," Aaliyah began, her voice steady. "But we are at a crossroads. We can either continue down the path of pure profit, or we can build something meaningful, something that will leave a lasting legacy for this company and for future generations." The board members exchanged skeptical glances. "Miss Alabi," one of them said, "you're asking us to put our money into something uncertain. What's the guarantee that this will work?" "There are no guarantees," Aaliyah replied. "But I believe this is the future. And I believe it's the right thing to do." The silence in the room was palpable. Chief Alabi, who had remained quiet until now, cleared his throat. "I've watched my daughter grow and change in ways I never imagined," he said, his voice tinged with both pride and hesitation. "I may not fully understand her vision, but I see the good it's doing, and I support her." To her surprise, the board members voted in favor of the initiative, albeit reluctantly. Aaliyah's victory was bittersweet. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew this was the right direction.